Hello, welcome to Duncan Egg Bricks and to part 64 of my Hogwarts MOC series. A few parts ago, in part 35, we built the greenhouse, and then later we added the terrain to it. And today we're going to be expanding the vegetation around Hogwarts by taking up the space that previously held the first flying lesson, which I moved to the new training grounds extension in the previous part of this series, and we're going to be adding the vegetable patches. Now, it's a little bit unclear in the books and the films exactly where the vegetable patches are, particularly in the films where we can see that there are multiple greenhouses like this all the way around the sides of the Long Gallery and the bell towers. I've just chosen to represent one of them just due to the scale. If you want some more information, you can go back to the video where I built the greenhouse. But I didn't want to just leave the rest of the space around the bell towers unoccupied, so I decided I would go ahead and add in vegetable patches, which, while not being 100% accurate to the film, are accurate to the book, and I'm kind of taking a bit from the films and a bit from the books. Now, the vegetable patches are probably actually on their way down to Hagrid's hut, but Hagrid's hut is no longer in the training grounds area. I've put it where it is from Prisoner of Azkaban onwards, over by the Whomping Willow across the wooden bridge. So it's all a bit of a mess, but I think that the area I've got here is going to be perfect for the vegetable patches. So we'll just slide this over to one side. We've got two more sections of the castle. So there's this corner section here, and then there's the gatehouse section just here. And I'm actually going to turn them round in a second so we can work on the back here. So this is where the flying lesson was. It's now moved outside, but I've left that part up on the shelf for now. So we're going to be adding some vegetable beds or patches in these spaces just here. I've devised a few different designs of vegetables, some of which will be recognisable and some of which I've just come up with completely randomly, as well as a little tree to go in the corner there. So I think what I will do is I will grab my bag of parts. I will get rid of the greenhouse for now because it's just taking up a bit too much space on my table. I'll turn these around and I will get building with the outline of the vegetable patches. I'm going to be using dark tan plates and tiles in order to create the borders around the beds. And the way that I'm kind of thinking of these is as though they're wood, kind of using like old railway sleepers or ties to make a border around each of the beds. And that's basically just so I don't have to try and inset the beds into this plate because it is just one layer of plate and I really don't want to make it more complicated than it needs to be. So I've got the digital plan just here and I'm going to go around and add in some of these parts here. So I'm going to make sure I get them in the right place and hopefully I'll be able to do that. So first one is going to be here. Yep, getting that right. So this is just going to be a small bed over on the side, and then there's going to be another bed here, which is actually going to continue onto the other part over there. And yeah, this is going to be 8. No, not 8. I'm already getting it wrong. Shows I can't even follow my own designs. That's why. So I've gone for a 4 and a 6 here rather than a 10 because that's a little bit more expensive. And yeah, don't need anything fancier than that. So should, with the remaining parts, be able to just make this border like this. I'll probably just do this one on camera and then I'll do the rest off camera because it isn't the most exciting thing to do. And then yeah, I'm just tiling these off on top, and there's partly, oops, knocking the camera, partly just for the look and also partly because I want to be able to have some things which overlap slightly with them, and that's a lot easier when it's tiles rather than having to worry about where the studs are. So nearly done here. Another tile there. The other reason I designed these using the dark tan tiles was because when you buy the modular Hogwarts sets, so the range that's been out for the last few years, you get an awful lot of dark tan tiles, and in particular these modified plates with a stud at either end, and they're used to hold the modules on top of each other. And now I don't use those in my castle, so I end up with a huge amount of them. So it was really nice to actually be able to use them in a build. So there we go, that's one bed. It's just 2 plates tall, and then there's going to be another plate layer. Oh, excuse the dust, I need to get some cleaning stuff and get that all a bit nicer. And then there's going to be a layer of reddish brown acting as earth. So what I'll do, I'll go ahead and construct the rest of the beds on both this and the other part just here, and then I will show you what I'm going to be putting in them. All the beds are now in place. I thought I'd just show you the very tiny bit outside the greenhouse so I can get it out of the way. It's literally just the end of the bed, and I've also positioned a bucket with a handle there. It did originally have a trans light blue stud in it acting as water, but they don't actually clutch in at all. It just sits there loosely, so I've removed it for now until things are back in place. So putting that to one side and straightening up a little bit, you can see the proper beds that I've positioned here. So yeah, they are all in there and sorted with the reddish brown acting as soil, and I've used various different types of jumpers and things to tile it off and make sure that we've got all the places correct for the plants to go in. So hopefully those are all in the right place. Let's start with this one. I've sectioned off the different things for the different beds. So first up, we've just got some pumpkins. This is the newer style pumpkin piece. They've previously used printed minifig heads. Some of the early Harry Potter sets had those printed as pumpkins and indeed as jack-o'-lanterns. There is another jack-o'-lantern piece which is very similar but has the carved bit and it's larger to fit over a minifigure's head. But these are just the regular pumpkins and they look really nice, just accessorized with a leaf piece, of which there's going to be an awful lot in this build, and then a small modified plate or flower plate in regular green. So these are just going to go at the back, and I think they look really nice even though they are very simple. Some of these plants, like I said, are going to be kind of representations of actual things, and some of them are just going to be random combinations that happen to look good, and this is one of those. It's literally just one of these three-stemmed or three-leaved stem pieces, which I think were introduced with the Neville collectible minifigure and the Harry Potter collectible minifigure series 1 with the Mandrake. But now they've been used in a whole load of stuff. These ones are in olive green and they've just got a single stud or hollow stud to hold them in place. Now we've just got some leaves, said there'd be a lot of them. These are in lime green, just to add a splash of extra colour there. We just got to make sure these are positioned correctly so that they don't clip the surrounding vegetation. So they can just go on there. Might do a little bit of adjustment afterwards, but they look pretty decent for now. I think that middle leaf should just go over the... Yeah, there we go. That looks a bit better. And then finally, something really, really simple. Just going to be using a bunch of these. These are just the carrot top pieces. They're sometimes used as twigs. And rather than actually attaching them to full carrots, I'm just going to put 6 of them into these jumper plates. And these are just representing carrots that are still buried underground. So we'll get the last few of those in, and that'll be this bed finished. This is the first one I designed, and it's probably the simplest as I was just getting a feel for it. But I quite like that because it's a nice, oops, try not to knock the camera over, but it's a nice little addition. So there we go, fairly simple. I think it's fairly easy to tell what I'm going for there. Let's move on to the next flower bed where things are a little bit more complicated. So that's going to be the first half of this side. These two pieces match up like that, and we have a full flower bed, and that should be pretty seamless. But let's start with this section. Grab another one of our boxes with all the pieces in. You can just about see the first piece, and that is a bunch of these. Now this is just a kind of plant stem piece which has a bar holder in the middle at the top there, and I've just put in some of these slightly larger flowers in flame yellow orange or orangish yellow, whatever you want to call it. I'm not 100% sure what these represent. Potentially they could be sunflowers. They're not quite right for sunflowers. They are some sort of flower, and we're just going to do 2 rows of those. So there are going to be 8 in total. Just got to be careful that they don't interfere with one another. And yeah, again, I'm just experimenting really with various different random combinations to see what I can create. So yeah, just 2 rows of these. Just the tedious process of actually putting them in place now. There's a couple at the back just facing the other way, and I know I'm going to knock these over at some point, but they look pretty good for now. There we go, a couple of rows of flowers. Now the next thing I actually changed as I was putting the pieces together. because I had a sudden thought, and that is that there are some plants in Harry Potter which are more well known, some fictional ones that is, and one of those is the dirigible plum. This is something which the trio find when they go to visit Xenophilius Lovegood, and it's a plum which, as it sounds, as the name would suggest I should say, floats or levitates, and I've kind of tried to represent them using these stem pieces. These are relatively new. They're the same diameter as the candle pieces, but they have these stems that come off the side. And I've seen them used this way up, or indeed this way up. I've decided to use them this way up. And then these orange studs just represent the dirigible plums. The idea being that they're actually dragging the stem up into the air. I don't know if it completely comes across, but I thought it was a fun little idea and thought, why wouldn't Hogwarts have some of these magical plants? So there's just 2 lots of those because these pieces are a little bit pricey. But there we go. And yeah, I appreciate the orange, and the orangish yellow isn't the biggest colour contrast in the world, so I may look at changing this in future, but I think that looks pretty good. Next up, we just have the most simple detail. There we go. Basically just, it can either represent a little shoot coming out of the ground, or just, you know, a little bit of colour to vary things up. Next up, we've got something which could be a cabbage. Yeah, maybe these are what the flesh-eating slug repellent is for. They're not really the same colour though. These are dark green leaves on a 1x1 modified brick with a stud on either side, on all four sides I should say, and then 2 of the flower plates, one on top, one on the bottom, in bright green. The reason I actually went ahead and used black, even though there are some green versions available, is that they are ridiculously expensive and not available. And to be honest, it's surrounded by those dark green leaves. I don't think you can tell that that's black in the middle. So yep, I've gone for that because it works for me. And we're just going to have one of them here. We're just going to make sure that these leaves are adjusted. One there, and it's the right way around so it doesn't clash too much. One is where all my hard work comes undone because I haven't worked things out properly. No, that fits perfectly. Perfectly breaking it. And yeah, that one there. Let's just pretend that never happened. There we go. So that is the first set of flower beds done, and they look pretty good. I think it's time we moved on to the next section. So firstly, we'll finish off the rest of that previous flower bed containing the possibly cabbages, and we'll do a little bit more detail with these shoots coming out of the ground, again just to add some variety of colour. And then we will add the final ones of these in. Again, requires a little bit of finagling, technical term. There we go, to get them in. One more here, and then obviously we'll have to make sure that they fit with the ones on the other part, so we'll test that in just a second. And this one can go here, he says, assuming that it'll fit. There we go, that just about fits. We can always adjust these leaves later. There we go. Just bring the other bit back in, check that that sits properly. Ooh, it's not liking it. There we go, something like that. I will adjust this off camera. But anyway, those 2 will match up and that'll be one continuous flower bed. So let's carry on this side. So you'll see we've got this, the other tiny bit at the end just goes down here, so we won't worry about that. On this side, I decided to go for something slightly different and trying to replicate something that's a little bit more like a climbing plant or a vine or something like that. And so to that end, I've used these larger leaf pieces, which you might be able to see around the back. These tend to get used for trees. And I've just anchored them onto 2 headlight bricks with more of these 3-leafed stem pieces. And then on top of those headlight bricks, we've got a modified 1x1 round plate with hole and then a bar, so those are kind of acting as though they're holding the plant up. And I've just accessorized them with some smaller leaf limb pieces, smaller 3-leaf modified plates, whatever you want to call them, and then just some red studs to represent something. But before we go ahead and put those on, there's a little bit more detail to fill in the gaps. You'll have noticed along the back here is just a run of plain studs, and we're just going to fill in some of those gaps using some more flower pieces. I was going to call them shrub pieces there. And as well as that, we're actually going to use one of these pieces, which, you know, draw your own conclusions about what this was originally designed as. What I'm using it to represent here is a shell. I got the inspiration for this from the Pirates of Barracuda Bay set, where it was used in a similar way. And, you know, sometimes you find the odd shell, probably a snail shell or something like that, in a flower bed. So I thought I would pop one in there. Also adds, again, a little bit more visual interest. And we'll just finish off with the other plant pieces here, and there should be one more, and there isn't, so let's just have a look in the remaining parts. Here it is. There we go. So then we are going to put our vines, or whatever they are, in place. So they should just go there and stay upright, hopefully. There we go. And the other one should just go there, and I think that looks pretty good, really. Yeah, that's all anchored in place. Don't think it's going anywhere. We can just check that things are stable. Yeah, I'd say so. There we go. So that is everything nearly done. We've just got one corner left to fill, where we're going to build a tree. Now, I don't have a huge amount of experience building trees, so I actually took inspiration from a couple of sets that I have built and that I own, and those are the Medieval Blacksmith and Rivendell. And the bits that I took from each of them is, firstly, I took the little mushroom here from Rivendell, although I'm sure it's been in other sets. That's just popped there behind there. And then the other thing I took was the technique for making the leaves, and that comes from the Medieval Blacksmith. So we've just got a modified brick with studs on 4 sides, and then into that are these plant stem pieces with flowers on the end, and then leaves clipped onto those. So once you add all of that together, you get a nice coverage, or a pretty nice coverage with leaves. So we'll see how this looks, maybe change it in future, but I think it's pretty good. I also took the opportunity while I was building this to get a piece that I've been thinking about getting for a while, and that was one of the relatively new squirrels. And I deliberately got this one in the dark orange so it can represent a red squirrel, because of course this is Scotland, and red squirrels are native to the UK, although they're a much smaller population than they used to be, and I thought that would be perfect. So that's just going to have a little perch in the tree there, just on this modified plate or bar piece, whatever you care to call it. And we'll just spin some of this around, make sure that this guy is seated nicely. And then we'll pop the other set of leaves on. And you're barely going to be able to see him when this is all said and done, but I think it'll really be worth it. If I can put this in place, I think I have missed a piece. I clearly have, because I am missing a 1x1 plate in reddish brown. So give me 2 seconds and I will find that. Shock and horror, I don't have any reddish brown plates, or any 1x1 reddish brown plates I should say, so I've had to settle for a dark brown one. You really won't be able to tell, and maybe the variation will be nice. I can say that I did this deliberately. And with that in place, these leaves will go on. There we go. You can just about see the squirrel poking through there. And we'll attach that to the base, just like so. There we go. And now we have, I think, a pretty nice tree in the corner. So let's put all these sections back together and we'll see the total effect. I won't put them back into the main castle because they'll be on the kind of wrong side to take a look at, but I think it'll be worth seeing all the parts back together. So here we are, everything back in place, starting from the greenhouse, which already existed. You can come out of the door into the patch with the climbing plant on the frame there, the tree in the corner with the squirrel hiding away inside it, mushroom behind the tree there, although I'm not sure you'd want to use that in any food, maybe as a potion ingredient, the slightly strange cabbages, the dirigible plums, the not quite sunflowers, and then over on the other side we have got the carrots, the pumpkins, and then the other things sprouting out of the ground there. So there we go, there is the vegetable patch all sorted, and there I am taking a stroll around it. I think it looks pretty good overall. So yeah, what do you think about this? Do you think this is an improvement on the flying lesson that was here previously? If you do, then please leave a comment down below, let me know, and let me know what you think I should be doing next to improve my Hogwarts castle. Obviously, still loads of things left to do, and I have got some areas fully mapped out and some other areas that I'm still working on. So drop a like down below to let me know you've enjoyed this, subscribe to the channel for future updates, you can support me on Patreon if you like, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.